and running.
All right. Well, welcome to the September 11th, 2024 meeting of the Human Resource and Compensation Committee. I'll call the meeting to order as the meeting is properly posted.
Yes, Taz.
All right, thank you. First order of business is section of the meeting where there's an opportunity for citizens to speak. Do we have anyone in this committee? Doesn't look like it. All right. Since there's no one waiting to address the committee and we have no correspondence to review, we'll move to the action items for approval. First item on the agenda is approval of the minutes from the August 14th, 2024 HR Compensation Committee meeting. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second. All right. All right, it's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes from the August 14th.
As it.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter who gets the first one.
Right.
We know the rest.
That was a photo finish to start out. All right, so it's been moved and seconded to approve the meetings. Is there any, or excuse me, to approve the minutes from the last meeting? Any discussion? All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Motion passes 3-0. Next, we have the resignations and retirements. We have 2 resignations, no retirements for approval. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. We approve the resignations as presented on the consent agenda. Any discussion? All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Motion passes 3-0. Next, we have the leaves of absence and leave modifications. And we don't have any this evening, so we will move to the new contracts and contract modifications. There are 5 new or modified contracts on the consent agenda, which you all received. For approval this evening, do I have a motion to approve as presented on the consent agenda?
So moved. Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded that we approve the contracts and contract modifications as presented on the consent agenda. Any discussion on those? All right, looks like none. So we'll vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Again, motion passes 3-0. All right, next we have on our agenda the discussion and possible action items, which we'll be discussing the key performance indicators, just like every committee has been discussing in the last couple of months. So that is actually a discussion and possible action item this evening. So Sharon, provide an update to the committee.
You bet. So last week we reviewed all 4 HR KPIs, or last month, pardon me. And this month then you saw in board docs, I have reminded you of the 4 in the ultimate recommendation slide, which would be that we use the other 3. Obviously, we continue to monitor that data, but then for the KPI, stick with the retention rate statistic, which that KPI read, teacher retention rate will be 92% or higher as the HR KPI. So that is what we're recommending this evening.
Questions or comments or discussion?
Yeah, Sharon, if you could just kind of refresh my memory, what's magic about 95%? Is that some sort of an industry?
Maybe it's 92.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yep, it's 92, and
92.
looking at trends that we've had for retention rate and what would be a healthy turnover rate is where we determine the 92%.
Okay.
So kind of summary.
That's fairly normal, about that much, about 35%.
95 was the teacher.
Okay. Oh, that's
Yeah,
what that
you
was.
saw that.
I saw this little green box here that said good, and that's student services. Yeah, well, that certainly would explain why I am completely right.
Well, yeah, that's what happens when we do the common slide decks, right?
Yeah, look the thing.
Well, and I accidentally printed 2 of them today. I threw one out because I knew I didn't need 2. I wish I would have kept that second one. I could have just handed it to you.
Right, if I could just take a second to look at the correct grammar.
So Sharon, that's basically what you're saying is that's on average turnover, your years like 5 to 10%. That's pretty.
We've been upwards of 14-15% for a district our size, so
Okay.
92 is a pretty I would say robust goal. We met that goal so far, looking at from 23-24 to 24-25 for turnover. So that would be a really healthy turnover rate for a district our size.
I know we talked a little last month about it, just how you calculate the retention rate. I guess I'm thinking specifically, we have some times that, this is just teachers.
So this data point, and that's why it gets confusing with the several data points. So speaking specifically for retention rate, that was all teachers. So classroom teachers, including psychologists, so anyone on a teaching contract. And then how we're going to calculate that is through FTE. So it's not number of bodies, it's going to be full-time equivalent. We run a report with DPI every fall where we have to report up all of our data. So that's going to be our snapshot anchor point, our FTE. So that's the number we're going to use. It ebbs and flows depending on if we're short-staffed or we added a position in September or December, but we're going to use that data point so we're consistent with where we're pulling it from. And then ultimately, I usually would report out about August what the retention rate was for the prior year. So we wait for some of those summer resignations to come through and then that, and retirements, and then that's what we would be using to calculate.
And then, calendar year or school year?
So now doing it this way, while we're using the DPI report, I'm gonna report out on school year.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Sounds-
Okay, so essentially what we're comparing is the number of FTE at the beginning of the school year to how many are still on staff at the end of that school year, the FTE equivalent.
Correct. I'll be pulling, so every resignation or retirement that comes your way through our committee, then I tally, because I sorted out by resignations and retirements, and then that will be what we take away from that total number that we pulled in
Okay.
September.
And these previous year totals are those school year?
Those are close when you run the data, but right now, these are school year totals, the one that we used, because for the purposes of that chart that we've been providing the board regularly when we had some feedback, that we were pulling just calendar year when you see those, that chart that we gave.
Which year?
All of these so far would be calendar year,
Oh, they
because
have,
that's what we have been pulling for the board previously.
oh,
But based on feedback from last month, I'll just change it to school year.
okay. And then that would start school year 24.
I have it for 23-24, going into 24-25.
What do you do? So as far as comparison.
It's very close, actually. So if you look at 2024 year-to-date calendar year, ironically enough, it was at 93.27, and my 23-24 into 24-25 is a little bit higher. It's coming a little bit over 94%. So it's very close.
23, 24?
Last year going into this year for my retention.
Around 94%.
Yeah.
So FTEs, not bodies, and
Correct.
school year, not calendar year.
Correct.
Anything confusing, sorry. So when I'm looking at the retention rate for 2023, that represents what time period?
Right now, that sheet has that asterisk that indicates that it is data by month. So then it's a calendar year total.
Okay. And then now 24 represents,
That number right there, 93.27, was year-to-date calendar.
year-to-date calendar.
Yeah, so whatever day I pulled those numbers, that would have been the retention.
From January 1 to whenever.
Correct. However, the data happens to also be almost exact for the school year.
Of 23 to 24. Got it.
Because you have to, so it's hard, because we're using 4 years, because we're calling it the 23-24 school year going into the 24-25 school year. So it would be kind of like the 2024 retention data. So they're almost identical, about 0.5% different.
So good that we at least have that for comparison purposes. Thoughts on that KPI? That's the KPI.
I think it's a good.
Yeah.
It's a good goal.
Yeah, I do as
Good
well. And
measure.
I do as well. And I feel like those other three are really kind of subcategories.
Right, those are the things you would hope you would score well on, or to achieve that,
Yeah.
your retention.
Right, which I think that was similar to some of the other, well, maybe every other committee that I've, listened to or attended. It seems like they've done a good job choosing like the main measurement, and all those other ones are you know, sub measurements, if you will, or could potentially feed into that,
Yeah.
or just not quite as important, so.
Or probably would provide clues if you don't hit your goal.
Yeah.
What area you might want to focus on.
Exactly.
Try these three lowers kind of uphold the overall
Yeah.
teacher retention. If you look at the way you look at it, if they're healthy, then the final goal is going to be
Yeah,
healthy.
and I think it's also one that gets attention, and that, administration, and I think district for that matter thinks it's important. So. All right, well, this was a discussion and possible action item that seems like we're at the point where we want to take a look at this, so.
I would move to approve the human resources KPI as presented.
Second.
All right, any other discussion? All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. All right, motion passes to approve that KPI 3-0. Last thing, any other business for future meetings? Anybody have thoughts? Topics? All right,
Insert one. Last time, there was some talk about looking also at the concept of benefits and salary and seeing if that compensation was competitive in our area. I think David had brought that up at the very end of last month's discussion.
Yeah, I was thinking about that as well. I mean, so is that something you track already, Sharon?
Yes.
So maybe what we might want to see is, and I'm assuming you report out on that, or not, you don't report out.
Not unless, potentially when we're going into, closed session for teacher negotiations. But I can easily report out on.
Yeah, I'm wondering if maybe that might be something we would just want to see report out on, because that is the one thing that, looking at those other measurements, the one thing that we wouldn't have a view of otherwise is, while those other numbers are good and the retention rate still good, it is possibly a product of becoming less competitive in the compensation area.
Particularly low and high salaries. It's hard to determine that
Yeah.
based on years of experience, so would those be a data point you'd like to see?
What would you recommend?
I think it's a starting point to report out on low and high. Everyone's compensation structure is very different.
So you can't really look at like the average compensation in our district and say compare it to Waukesha, which is a similarly sized school district, right?
We could if we just literally go straight average of all their employees, divide their salaries. I mean, we could do that.
Is that difficult to get to?
I can find out.
Maybe this should just be a discussion, maybe you could look into what's the data that's available, and think about in terms of, as an HR director, what are the metrics that are important to you? And how could you report that out in a way that's a nice first snapshot of where we're at?
Okay, I can.
Mrs. White, is that?
I was thinking starting salary would be a key thing. Is that as you're looking at hiring new people right out of college, like what is that starting salary? It's one of the ones that's been easily comparative in that market.
Yep, and that's very easy to get.
That's what I was thinking.
I probably already have it already.
That's what I thought,
Yeah.
that's come up in previous meetings.
Yeah.
Okay, not here, but. Yeah, it's salary and benefits, I guess. So, pretty complicated.
It varies
Yeah, they say, I don't even know how you compare benefits.
Yeah.
Very great.
Unless there is like a total compensation number that is easy to get to, that incorporates the monetary value of the benefits.
There is, but every district, some districts might not have employees pay any part of the premium, some might pay 13%. So it's just all very apples to oranges.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't wanna, at least from my perspective, I don't wanna make this laborious task for you, so I guess I would be just looking for what are the easy ones that would give us a real clear vision of whether or not we're competitive.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'll put something together.
Great.
Awesome, thank you.
Sounds good. All right, our next meeting will be Wednesday, October 9th, back at the normal time of 6 PM before the board meeting. Thank you all. Meeting's adjourned.
WebEx. End meeting. Okay, WebEx. End meeting.
I'm fussing, you gotta, the voice.
Okay, WebEx. End